Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, I sat down with Bart Busschots. And as you know, Bart is looking for a new EV, and he has been keeping us informed on his great EV journey. And I think this might be it. I think this might be our last episode until Bart makes a final choice. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode. I did a little something different here. On today's episode, I released two versions of this show. One version is edited, where I cut out all the nonsense that usually is me that brings up, and and Bart stays on topic because he's professional. The other version, I left all that nonsense in. And the reason why is because I keep saying, if you could only just sit back and hang out with Bart and I, you could see what a lovely human being he is. It's a lot of fun just to talk to him about anything. And I wanted to share some of that with you. So most of the time, like I said, I edit my own nonsense out because it doesn't add to the conversation. I left it in the full version. So if you'll see the episode, it'll say Bart's EV Adventure, full or edited. The edited, if you don't want my extra nonsense, you can not listen to that one. The full one is it's unedited. You get the whole kit and caboodle. The episode you're listening to right now is the full version. Okie doke, without further ado, let's welcome Bart to the program.
Delighted to be back, Bodie.
I think this is our third visit when it comes to your journey of buying a new EV. And a couple of things have happened since the last time we talked.
Yes.
But I want to save the Model 3 Highland for the last.
Okay.
But you've driven some more vehicles.
I have. So when last we spoke, I had done the Volkswagens and been really disappointed. I had done the BYD, the Atto 3 on your recommendation, mainly to get a feel for the brand because I knew I didn't actually want a crossover-shaped car. But I was kind of impressed with it, especially for the price. The handling was awful, but everything else about the car was great, and the price was really good. And actually, and a slight update on that, I got a message over WhatsApp from the dealer on Wednesday with the Irish brochure, which was the first time they had full specs for us. So I now had the full specs and the price on the car. It's basically 550k range, and it's coming in at 45,000 euro, which is 20,000 euro less than the Tesla Model 3. That's 2/3 the price. Like, again, and that's for the Seal, which is the Model 3 shape and size. Looks very pretty. So he said there will be test drives in 3 or 4 weeks, and I said, give me a shout when they're available. I will be down.
Do you know if the Dolphin is making its way to Ireland?
It was not mentioned. The bigger sporty one was mentioned. What was that? Oh, Han. Yeah, the BYD Han was also mentioned.
Yes.
And he may have mentioned by name one or two of the giant big SUVs, but I didn't care. I didn't pay attention.
Yeah, I'm not sure because the Dolphin is a little bit smaller. It's a hatchback. So I'm not sure if that would fit what you are looking for or not, because I know you have bikes.
Yeah, no, there was no mention of a hatchback. So it was the Atto 3, and then there were bigger SUVs, and then there were the sporty ones. There was no mention of anything else.
Okay. So what have we driven since the last time we talked? Yeah,
so in chronological order since last we spoke, I've done the Toyota BZ4X, which is the worst named car I've test driven so far. The only reason I can remember it is because I have discovered that there is a slight amount of meaning to the name. BZ is Toyota's brand for Beyond Zero. Apparently, they think they can get their emissions less than zero. So mathematics appears not to be their strongest suit. The 4, because it's an approximately 4-sized car, it competes with stuff like the ID4, and the X because it's a crossover. And that is the only way I can remember the darn thing. So it's Toyota's version of the ID4. And it is the only fully electric Toyota they sell in Ireland. And I'm not sure they have any other ones anywhere else either.
Do you have Subaru in Ireland?
I certainly see them on the road, so someone must sell them here. But
Okay.
you don't see a lot of Subaru garages around or anything like that. So I'm wondering if they're imported from the UK.
The Solterra is the same car, pretty much the
Oh,
same platform as the Toyota EV.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I'll see if I can find the dealership. Okay, that's interesting. So chronologically, next was the Polestar 2, and then the last one I've done was the Hyundai Ioniq 6. But I would like to talk to you in a slightly different order because I want to go from good, better, best.
I think that's great.
So I'm going to start with good, which is the Toyota. And honestly, I can sum up my review, I think, in one sentence. The Toyota was what I expected the ID4 to be.
Okay.
Solid, rugged, felt like it wouldn't break. It felt really well put together. It was utterly unexciting. But it felt like the most reliable family car you could imagine. It felt like German engineering. It felt like everything I thought the ID4 would and didn't. It's, I mean, on the whole, it was good. It was like, there was nothing I hated and there was nothing I loved. It was
That
just a good car.
that's how I felt because I almost bought not the Corolla. What's the one up from that?
Oh, you guys have different names for them all.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it doesn't matter. They're mid-sized sedan, not the Lexus, but it was a mid-sized sedan. But it felt like I was driving a couch, and I was 32 at the time, and I didn't want to feel like I was driving a couch. It would have been fine if I had kids and whatever, but at 32, I wanted something with a little more pep. But it was fine as a car. There was nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't exciting.
yeah, yeah. And I'm just sort of looking at my own notes because it's been a while since I did a Toyota. The Toyota was a great example is the wrong word, a typical example of what so far all the traditional car companies don't seem to comprehend is that 1 foot driving should involve 1 foot. It's in the name. Toyota, in their infinite wisdom, have 1 foot driving with an undisableable creep feature.
Mm.
So you can go with 1 foot from about 5 kilometers an hour up to whatever the maximum speed of this yoke is, back down to 5. But if you'd like to go to 0, tough. You need to move your foot onto the brake. It's like, wait, why? The whole point of this EV driving style is that you move your foot, just the 1 foot from 0 to infinity back to 0. What it did have that takes it above the BMW is that at least I could put it in in regen mode permanently. There's like a button on the center console. Basically, it has a picture of a foot on a pedal, and you push the button, and then you have regen. And as long as the button is pushed, you will have regen for infinity. So I would basically, if I were to buy this car, I would push the button once, and then I would probably stick some sticky tape over it or something, so no one ever pushed it again. But it's still going to do that creep thing, and that makes me really cranky. The other thing that just blew me away is I drove out from the dealership. I was like, okay, this is fine, but let's see how configurable it is. What can I change to make it be exactly what I want? The answer is nothing. You go into the menus, and apart from choosing the temperature for the cabin and what's on the radio, that's it. There is, like, I'm used to going into the Tesla and tweaking stuff. Even the ID4 had some settings. When I stood in the settings, I was like, no, there's nothing for you here. Why are you here? So that was kind of weird. It did, it had sort of a nice 2-screen setup as well. The front one was kind of interesting. It was really far ahead of you, which it was an interesting experience. But actually, it sort of worked quite well. It was kind of in my line of sight, but just down below the windshield, very, very, very far away from me. But it did kind of work. But the main screen, wasn't high quality. It wasn't particularly good. And the other thing, I just didn't find the layout of the buttons particularly easy to sort of to work with. I was always stretching for things. It seems like nothing was quite where it should be, and nothing was easy to get to. But it did have a really nice panoramic roof as well. And the adaptive cruise control, the auto steer, all that stuff worked perfectly for me. Like I say, it's just a dependable, good car. And it didn't feel sluggish. Like the ID4 just didn't feel like it did anything. This yoke, at least, it wasn't sporty, but it wasn't bad actually. It handled decently. Everything inside it was really comfortable. I did my usual trick of parking when I came back to the dealership, parking next to my own car, which is a good way to test how confident I am on the reversing cameras and stuff. And it was all good. So basically, it's a solid EV with just quibbles. I think there was nothing about it made me. Yeah, it's just a solid EV. Like I said, it's a good car, but if you want to be excited, don't buy this one.
Because I'm looking at the interior right now, and you're right. Like it looks like that instrument cluster is like on a swing arm. If you're looking at it from the side view instead of like head directly in front of it, like if you're in the driver's seat, it looks like it's kind of like mounted up in a. I don't even know. Like it's a robot
it's
almost.
A strange thing because it's inside like a big V that funnels your eye into it. It's like someone took a dashboard and pulled it back. And it's stuck.
It was like they were designing VR glasses, and they're like, you know what? Let's just put it on. We'll just make an instrument cluster. We won't put it on our face.
It is a strange look, and the styling is actually a lot more avant-garde than the car feels to drive. Because I think from the outside, it actually looks quite stylish. It's pretty squared off, but it's not as weird looking as more recent Toyotas. I do kind of. I think it looks decent for a Toyota anyway.
Did you feel confined at all? Because the way that the center console works is the center console from where the armrest is to the instrument cluster, that's just kind of one continuous ramp. There's just, did that feel at all? Yeah. Did that feel claustrophobic at all? Or okay.
Well, maybe other people think differently, but I thought it felt cozy. It sort of felt like you were getting into something nice, and it was like, oh, this car is hugging me. You know, I kind of liked it actually in there, and lots of little stowy places, little cubby holes. You know,
I do like that little storage area underneath what I called the bridge.
Giant big center. Yeah, I don't know what you call it. It's flowing center console with no end. Yeah,
that's a kitten storage, I believe, is what my son would call that.
Big enough, probably stick a small puppy in there actually.
Yeah, probably.
So like I say, a good car, like I wasn't angry with it. I just wasn't excited by it. It's like, okay, you know, if the worst comes to the worst, then this is the car I buy. Okay, fine. It's a good car. Then the next one I'm going to talk about is the most recent one I drove, which was the Hyundai Ioniq 6. And I found myself fighting with this car a lot because whoever designed the software either is a 12-year-old boy who wants it to look cool and has no idea what it should do, or my brain is on a different wavelength to theirs. But I could not get the information I needed. It would just show me really pretty visualizations. And it took me forever to realize that the important information was in teeny tiny writing in, like, you know, the bottom corners of the screen and stuff. Its worldview is completely different to any other car I've ever considered or driven. And even when I pulled over to try Google the answer to things, I couldn't get an answer because it doesn't call anything by what anyone else calls it. So to make it do regen, you have to put it in eco mode. Not regen, eco. And then if you want one pedal driving, you put it in eco and turn the regen up with the flappy paddles.
Yes.
And there's apparently, now I think I did a bit more Googling after I gave the car back. I think you can make it stay permanently by making a custom drive mode. So by default, it has like eco and sport, and then there's one called custom. And so I think if I switch to custom and then I put everything the way I want, I think it'll stay there. So I think I can make it always be 1 foot driving if I use custom, I think. But like I say, I spent 10 minutes beside the road on my phone Googling, and I still don't feel I understood the car. And the thing I definitely never, ever made peace with was the cruise control. I could make it go once. It would start at 30 kilometers an hour, which is slow. That's like 15 miles an hour at most.
Right around there, yeah.
And then I would have to flap it up 5 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 5 kilometer, 5 kilometer. The speed limit is 100 kilometers. That's a lot of fives from 30. And then once you hit the brake or something, it will cut off, as it should, for your own, it shouldn't keep going. But then I couldn't get it to re-engage. I could reset it back to 30 and paddle, but I couldn't make it just pick up where you left off. Just carry on. I couldn't figure it out, and I still haven't. And I asked a couple of friends who drive Ioniq 5s and Ioniq 6s, and they were like, you tried to use cruise control in the town? Oh, no. That's on the motorway, and I used it about 4 times since I bought the car a year ago. It's terrible. Okay. So, I don't know, maybe it just isn't. I use my cruise control the most in urban driving because I find 50 kilometers an hour really difficult to do. And if the car is doing it, I won't get speeding tickets. If my foot is doing it, I will. So I really wanted in the low speeds, and I wanted to follow the speed limit. So in Ireland, we have 30k at schools, 50k in towns, 60k in suburbs, 80k on small roads, and 100k on big roads, and 120k on the motorway. That's a lot of different speed limits. And the nice thing with the Tesla is you just, put it into cruise control, and it'll jump to the speed limit. And so it'll just do the right thing. And that makes all the difference in the world. We're starting at 30 going paddle, 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 paddle. And then as soon as you touch the brake, the thing disengages and I can't get it to go back on. Oh, I fought with that car so hard. But apart from that, when I was done fighting with it, it's actually a nice car for the rest. So if they were to keep the hardware and give the software some TLC so it was actually user-friendly, everything else about the car is actually pretty good. For a start, the range is really high. It's well over 600 kilometers, which is fantastic. It looks sporty. It feels like a crossover. It's the weirdest thing. You see this car that looks like a 911 or something, and you step in, and you're not sitting like in the Model 3, with your backside on the road and your feet way out in front of you. You're sitting like you are in a crossover, upright, feet down. You feel like you have a big commanding view over everything. So you really do feel like you're in a crossover, but all around you is this very sleek, sporty looking car. And the way it's curved, I think, is what makes it look short. But it's not. It's really tall. Yeah. It's also quite long, and it's also quite wide. It is a big car. It's actually a way bigger car than it looks, which you do notice. Yeah, you do notice it as you're trying to, navigate through town and stuff. I got to, because the dealership for my nearest Hyundai dealership is in a fairly small rural town. Not rural, provincial. I got to take it on some little mountain back roads, which is nice. So I got to poke around in town where the traffic was awful. The cruise control, when it was behaving properly, it did the whole braking in a sensible distance thing. I eventually made it do the 1 foot driving, which it was good at. The auto steer, as best as I can tell, is perfect. It handled everything I threw at it. And when I took it up the back roads, it was way more fun than anything else apart from the Polestar I will get to in a minute. It was not as much fun as a Tesla. It was way more fun than the Toyota, and 0% terrifying, unlike the Atto, which really was horrible. So on the whole, it was actually, it's not a bad second place of all the cars I've driven so far, actually. And you sort of get the feeling that apart from the weird software, Hyundai seem to understand what an EV should be better than any other traditional car maker I've tried yet. They certainly understand better than Volkswagen. They certainly understand better than Toyota. So I was kind of like, okay, these Hyundai people, they actually do comprehend how an EV should work. So, on the whole, again, I did the whole reversing into a tight camera space or into a tight parking space. All the cameras were fine. So it was actually a pretty good car, and I wouldn't feel sad I think I'd have to spend a week learning how to bend my brain to match its user interface. I'm sure I'd succeed, and then it would just be, well, that's how this car works. That's fine. And like I say, I think if I make a custom profile, I think I can make it remember. At which point, most of the weirdness would go away, and then the only thing I'm left with that no one's been able to explain to me, because every Ioniq 5 and 6 owner I talked to said they don't use it as the cruise control. None of them seem to think it could do what I want, so I don't know. Then again, a software update could fix it in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah. I thought and I haven't driven Ioniq 6 yet. My daughter and I were going to go and drive them at the beginning of May, or at the end of May. This is how long ago we had made these plans. And then something had happened, and then she left for the summer. She's back now, so we'll try again.
Have you driven a 5?
We're going to drive the 5, we're going to drive the 5, the 6, and the Genesis GV60 EV. Okay. That was the plan.
Because the Ioniq 5 and the Ioniq 6, the dashboard, they just picked it up and they put it in the other car. It is the same. It's also exactly the same as the Kia EV6. It's the same car. So the difference is, obviously, it's way better electric motors and stuff, and way better battery, obviously, in the Ioniq 6 and the Ioniq 5. But really, software-wise and just the physicality of the interior, it's the same car. It's shockingly the same car. Because I had 2 colleagues in work who happened to be parked next to each other at the charging station, which I guess means it's not that unlikely, with an EV6 and an Ioniq 5. And the outside is so different, right? The EV6 is so roundy and curvy, and it looks way bigger. And the Ioniq 5 is all square. It's like square headlights with a square everything. And then you open the door, and they have that identical big square dashboard. It's exactly the same.
Yeah. The GV60 is also really similar on the inside, with some nice little elements like, I can't remember exactly what all. There's ambient lighting, but I think that might be in the EV6 as well.
I don't know about the EV6. The Ioniq 6, so while the dashboard is identical, the center console and the doors and stuff are much nicer in the Ioniq 6 than the Ioniq 5. And I'm pretty sure the Ioniq 6 had the nice lighting and stuff, a bit like the Atto did, actually. That was really nice inside as well. Like it did feel a nicer place to be than the Ioniq 5, but in terms of the screens, they're the same size, the same resolution, the same terrible interface. Yeah, like I said, the software did not improve. It looks beautiful with these cool animations and stuff, but in terms of actually telling you stuff, it doesn't seem to be its point.
Did you recline the seat?
I adjusted everything so that it was comfortable, so I guess I did.
Well, they have a little footrest that comes up when you recline the seat all the way.
Oh no, I didn't try that, and the dealer didn't tell me to. Poop.
Mm.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't know about that, because I definitely would have tried that. That sounds rather cool.
Yeah, my kids are out aged for this, but I used to have to sit in Driveline because they went to one school that didn't have buses. So you'd get to Driveline 45 minutes before you needed to pick your kid up. Otherwise, you would be there an hour after your kid got out of school. It was a nightmare. So when I saw that, I was still picking my kids up from Driveline. This was for the Ioniq 5. This was, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man,
I could just kick back.
So nice. Like I could just sit in the car and take a nap and set an alarm.
Yeah. I can see the value in that, especially if you need, or your kids play some sort of sport and it's just too much effort to go back home. Just, yeah, fine. You go play your sports ball. I'll just be here with my newspaper. I'll just kick back. Or my iPad, let's be realistic. But yeah. I wish I'd known about that, because I certainly would have given it a go, but I did not. It is big in there, though. It is a very comfortable place to be inside the Ioniq 6.
Yeah, I got in the back seat. I felt like the back seat was fairly comfortable. I think it was either the EV6 or the Ioniq 5. When I sat in the back seat, it felt like my head was almost touching the top of the roof. it just felt like it was very tight. But because the Ioniq 6 is so rounded, I didn't have that feeling in there.
Interesting. Yeah, because it does. It's like a cross between a Volkswagen, a really, really, really big old-fashioned Volkswagen Golf, and I think it also reminds me an awful lot of a 911 front and back.
Yeah, it's just got that styling, that wider stance.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, it's a surprisingly nice place to be inside, and they do look good on the outside. Yeah, like I say, good, better, best. So this one is better, and the Ioniq 6 is definitely in a very strong second place on my list. So my list is firming up, and number 2 is definitely the Ioniq 6.
Right on.
And that takes us on to my number 1, which is without a shadow of a doubt, the Polestar 2. I have no complaints. I can quibble about a few things because I'm me, and of course I can quibble about a few things. But there is nothing I can say that is bad about the car. As soon as I sat in it, I realized that this is a car by a company that is as EV first as Tesla, that understands the importance of software as much as Tesla, and that is built by a bunch of racing engineers with Scandinavian engineering skills. And that's a really good combination, because that thing feels as indestructible as a Volvo. Like, it just, everything about it is solid. The software, the screens are beautiful. The center console is like a portrait mode iPad. The front dashboard is very much like a traditional car dashboard, but bigger, and very, very good resolution screen. It's all a screen, but it's shaped like a dashboard. And it tells you everything you need really, really clearly. It's like IKEA made it. It's minimalist, elegant, tells you everything you need and nothing more. It's really good software. It's really physically nice in there. Things are where you want them to be. They feel right. And then you drive it. I thought the Tesla was fast. I thought the Tesla handled well. It does. But this thing blew me away. Now, very clever of them. I had said, because I didn't want to wait, they ask you on the intake form, do you want to drive the dual motor or the single motor, or do you not care? And I only had one day I could do the drive, and I was like, I don't want to not get to do this test drive because they're going to pick the wrong car or something. So I just said, I don't care. Just give me a Polestar. Very wise of the dealership. They gave me the dual motor. And their dealership is at the foothills of the Dublin Mountains. And they said, you have an hour and a half to do as you wish. By the way, the mountains are just over there. So I was like, well, I'm going to put 2 and 2 together here. I can drive suburban driving to the motorway from the dealership. I can go on the motorway for 10 minutes to get to the bottom of the mountains. And then I can go up country roads through the mountains, back to the motorway and back to the dealership, and have half an hour to spare if I want. So I did. I went up the Dublin Mountains. Oh my God. I have never, like, I always say that the Tesla corners as if it had super glue on its wheels, but actually it's nowhere near as sure-footed. I felt like I was driving a mountain goat. This thing went exactly where you put it, with this sure-footedness you wouldn't believe, acceleration that defied imagination, and it could steer and turn as if it was perfectly normal to be able to do those 2 things at once without even feeling the tiniest of a hint that there even was software fighting hard to make physics work. Like, I love how the Tesla Model 3 drives, but this thing puts it to shame. Now, that was the dual motor, and it was very, very clever of them to put me in the dual motor first, because it absolutely blew my socks off. So then I went back to the dealership, and I still had half an hour left over. And, so I was talking to the dealer, and I said, look, really enjoy that drive, but actually, realistically, I want the longest possible range. If I've understood your brochure right, that means a single motor, not a dual motor. And he said, you have read the brochure right. That is exactly what it means. We have a single motor here now. Do you want to just take the single motor and compare? I was like, well, actually, yeah, because I really like this car and I actually genuinely want to see what the single motor is like. The single motor I drove, and this is very important. So I drove the 2023 model year, and it has one spectacular difference to the Tesla Model 3. The single motor is connected to the front wheels, not the back wheels. This means that you're steering and accelerating on the one set of wheels. So while it handles better than my Tesla, only just. So it's quick and it's great fun, but when you try to steer and accelerate, either you will feel the traction control fight you, or if you're on gravel, it'll just go and throw half the gravel behind you. Which the Tesla won't do. The Tesla you'll just feel the traction control stop you. I'm not sure which is better or worse. It's different. So it's notably different that the front wheel drive is just, it compromises things a bit. But it was still, even with the front wheel drive, it was still a nicer drive than the Tesla, but only just. So I mentioned this to the dealer and he said, well, it's funny you should say that. He said, because the 2024 model year, which we will be selling from approximately, depending on how things go, April or May, is going to have 2 changes over the car you've just driven. It's okay. What are the 2 changes? It's going to have 600 plus range, not confirmed, probably about 620, which made me immediately go, ooh, that's better than the 550 you're offering now. And we're moving the one motor to the back because it handles better. I was like, yeah, it does. So basically, the things that the car had that were putting it behind the Tesla has 609 range, so 550 was less, and that was annoying me. But they're saying 620 or more, and the one I drove was front wheel drive, and that is a compromise. And now they're offering me one with the motor on the back. I'm pretty darn sure that's my next car.
Interesting, because that is high praise based on if you would have came out of the
cranky
gate.
I've been at everything else.
No, not at all. But if you would have came out of the gate with this car and said, "This is the car," I think I don't know if it would have had as much of an impact as this, because you had so many more experiences and you learned how many more things that you really didn't care for. When it comes to having a car. And if you're going to spend that much money on an item, you should care for all of it, not pieces of it.
Correct.
So, and 385-mile range was what 620 kilometers would end up getting you for those of us that live in the United States. That's pretty good. Very good.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good. It's it's 10 more than the newest Tesla long range. And, what I have now is 420. So it's way more than 420. And now, it's not perfect because there's one thing that makes me mildly cranky about it. I have been assured by the dealer, if I want to, I can avoid this problem by never signing in, but the software is by Google.
Yeah.
And they think it's a feature. And they tell everyone, no, you can sign into your Gmail. It's like, I do not want my car signed into my non-existent Gmail because I don't trust Google as far as I could throw them. But you can, I double-checked with the dealer, with the engineer, basically with every human being I could speak to, and they all said the same thing. No. If you do not log into a Google account, the car will function perfectly. You get 2 years of free internet connectivity. After that, you will have to sign up to T-Mobile, and you will have to give T-Mobile your information so that T-Mobile can give you a SIM card for the car. But you do not ever have to sign into Google. And it has CarPlay. Therefore, you can just use CarPlay. Okay, fine. I will accept this. So, on the whole, I think the Google problem that really had me very worried, I nearly didn't drive the car at all because of the Google. I nearly didn't do the test drive because of the Google. And then after every other car had been so disappointing, because remember, the Ioniq 6 I drove after I drove this. Up until then, I had been so disappointed with everything. I was like, okay, I really need to give the Polestar a go, even though it's Google. And I'm really glad I did. Because I think there's a couple of things going on. So this company only make EVs. So they're very passionate about EVs and they get EVs. They understand EVs, which is why Tesla works. And so these guys, I think these guys have now arrived where Tesla have been for quite a few years. But they have arrived at the same place, and it's now that I'm buying a car, so that's fine by me. The fact that they only just got here now is not my, I don't care, right? They're here now. This is good enough. And so far, no one else seems to have caught up with Tesla that I've driven yet anyway. So there's a lot going on there. Like I said, the new version is going to be the rear-wheel drive with a longer range. All of the materials are sustainable, and they actually have a lot of detail on the carbon footprint of the entire process of manufacturing the car, all the materials and stuff. So they're thinking it through all the way. They're Volvo engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And I may be like a Scandinavian in disguise. I just love the mindset of your IKEAs and stuff like that. It agrees with me. I've always, the saddest day of my car related life was the day that Saab went bust. I always wanted to own a Saab, and they don't exist anymore. But I kind of feel like if Saab did exist, they'd make a Polestar. It feels like that's sensibility. So it really agrees with me at an emotional level. And if I'm going to fork over 69-ish thousand euro, it probably should agree with me at an emotional level. Which I think the biggest quibble I have is that their shade of blue is around about as terrible as Apple's ability to make a blue iPhone. It's like, you say Apple it's blue, everything. Do you?
Yeah. It's every color but blue is the color of their iPhone.
And if I shine a bright spotlight on it, I can get a hint of blue out of it, but it's pretty black, really. Your green is pretty black, really. In fact, all of your colors are pretty black, really, apart from your white, which is most definitely white. And just the other thing, the dealerships are also very cool. So the Dublin dealership is new. So they have a dealership in a shipping crate. The thing is literally 4 shipping crates that assemble into a dealership. I imagine there's a button they push and it sort of transforms out, but it's probably slightly more complicated than that. But the whole thing is this really fancy showroom in shipping crates. And they have the first use of VR that I have ever seen that I actually like. So they have in front of you, in the thing, one Polestar 2. And they give you an iPad and you point it at the floor and it calibrates itself, and then you lift it up and you see in the iPad the car in front of you. But on the iPad, you can change the wheels, and then the car changes in front of you. And you can walk around it and look inside, and it's all perfect, and it lines up exactly with the physical car. And you can change the color of the exterior and stuff. And already I was like, that's pretty cool. Your blue still sucks, but that's pretty cool. And they said, now change it to another model of Polestar. Because they didn't have anything else in Ireland yet, because they're only selling the Polestar 2 in Ireland at the moment. It superimposes the other models on the Polestar 2 with the front wheels perfectly lined up. And then you can choose to have it in fully opaque mode or in semi-transparent mode. And so you can see how much bigger a Polestar 3 is than a Polestar 2. Because it's literally sticking out above and behind and so on and so forth. It was a really cool experience. And what really blew my mind is you can look inside the car that's not there. And the interior gets superimposed on the other interior. It's head-wreckingly cool. It really worked. It worked really well.
Yeah, that is a feat of software engineering right there. That is not an easy thing to do, because if you move it fast enough, you would think that you'd get a little jiggle or something.
It blew me away. It genuinely fools you. It's amazing. And like I say, I've heard a lot of hype about this VR thing, but that was the first time I looked at it and went, oh, this works. This has a use. Now, the dealer was quite keen to tell me how way bigger the Polestar 3 is. And I was like, yeah, I don't want a bigger car. If you made a smaller one, I'd buy that one. Like, yeah, no, we don't make a smaller car. It's fine. Just put the motor in the back and make it go further. And you've sold me, to be honest. So, assuming the 2024 model year lives up to what the dealer promised me, I will be buying this car. Oh, most certainly. I'm still going to test drive the Seal, the BYD Seal, because I'm kind of curious, and they have an opportunity to blow my socks off, but they'd have to beat the Pulsar 2.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that I got to be on this ride with you, even a little bit. I honestly thought that after you looked around a little bit when we first started talking, that you just end up with a Model 3.
So did I, especially after my visit to Volkswagen, because I didn't know how much of what I loved about the Model 3 was Tesla and how much of it was just modern car. And it turns out that Tesla make really good cars. They're run by a lunatic, but they make really good cars. And I want a car where I'm not afraid of software updates. So I want away from the lunatic, but I want everything else. I want to keep all the cool stuff, right? I want a car that is as good, that is as much fun, that is as forward thinking, that is as environmentally friendly, that is as well engineered. And the Pulsar 2 is. And it's just Volvo. I like Volvo. I don't mean, I've always wanted to like a Volvo or something. So it appeals to me that way too.
Yeah, for sure. In some small way, the Volvo EX30, which is their really affordable EV, it's around $35,000, right? It's an SUV, so it wouldn't work for you necessarily, but that's kind of what I drive here in the US. And that car came out or was announced after I had already put my deposit down, and we were really close to getting it, the Model Y. But for the roughly $20,000 price difference, and if you add in tax and stuff, it would probably be closer to $15,000 price difference. I would have been happy saving more money and still going with a Volvo. Nobody looks down at you when they're like, "What are you driving?" You're like, "A Volvo," and they're like, "Oh,
yeah." It doesn't come with a. What was it? I saw someone in a chat group where it had a sticker. I bought mine before Elon was crazy or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing you wanted to talk about, because it is something I've been, I was sort of waiting on, is, okay, so there's a rumor Tesla are going to do the Model 3 again. There's a rumor Tesla are going to do the Model 3 again. And every time I was on, you would tell me, yeah, I swear the rumor mill says they're about to do the Model 3 again. They finally did it again.
Yep, they finally came through. The Model 3 Highland.
And is that a code name, or are they actually calling it that?
Nah, it's a code name. I think they're just calling it the refreshed Model 3 for the short term.
Yeah. Oh, that's thoughts? Interesting. It's not available yet in Ireland. I've just gone to their website because I've been following their website since the announcement came out. And initially, the Irish website wasn't updated at all. Now they are saying we can pre-order. Okay, well, I guess pre-order is good. So I'm just looking at it now that they finally updated the website. Really cool photograph they picked, actually. It does look, I mean, they didn't, it's not like it doesn't look like a Model 3, but it does look like a Model 3 with recent plastic surgery in the good way.
Yeah, it looks a little more styling wise like the Model S on the outside.
It's just a little bit more modern. They're just a little refresh. Just bring it up with the times. I like what they've done with it. It's not a huge change, but I do like what they've done with it. It's now 602 kilometers for the dual motor version. They've changed their versions, haven't they? Because there used to be 3 models, and now there's only 2 models, I think.
Yes. So didn't the standard range version hasn't seen the update as no the performance wasn't the performance
well, so there used to be a single motor, which is what I drive at the moment, and then there was a dual motor, and then there was a better dual motor, and one of them had a longer range than the other. I think the middle one had the longest range, so you could basically have cheap, go far, or go fast was Correct. Basically the 3 models. And so the one I would have been buying was the middle one, was the go far, and what I own at the moment is the cheap. I literally I went to the Model 3 website, I went, every dial here I'm going to turn to the cheapest I can. And then I paid €3,000 to make it blue. So I didn't quite buy the cheapest car because I really do have a thing for blue cars. I don't know if you noticed that.
We have mentioned that.
But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, I think there's some extra things that you can do on the steering wheel. But in general, I think that it's a good update. If I had bought a Model 3 one day before this was announced, I don't know that I'd be too bummed, other than the new Model 3 has ventilated seats. Not having ventilated seats would make me bummed a little bit. But
given where you live, yeah, I'd be straight back to the dealership going, the other one, please.
Yeah. We're recording this on September 16th, Bart, and it is 103 degrees here.
I don't remember what that is in Celsius, but I know it's too much. Like 90 something is too much for me, so 100 and something is definitely too much.
It's like when your grandma gives you a really long hug and then she gives you a kiss, but her lips are all wet and gross and she wants to kiss you on the lips. That's exactly what it is.
I've just asked Siri and it's 39.4 Celsius. That's near as doesn't matter 40 degrees Celsius. Not good. Not good.
No. We had like 59 days in a row of over 110 degrees. I'm going to complain about the weather because that's what Arizonans do a little bit.
Hang on. That's close to body temperature. It's not quite body temperature, but it's not bloody well far off. How are you supposed to stay functional?
Well, you stay inside.
Air conditioning.
I'm really advocating for switching the school year so that kids are able to be off when it's cold outside and be in school when it's hot outside. But I seem to be the only person who thinks that, because my kids, and during the summertime, we're going to trampoline parks and stuff like that. We're not doing anything super fun in the summer because it's hot here. But in the wintertime, they could stay outside as much as they want and go and do things that kids do. But for whatever reason, they're like, it's more important for you to be in school during this time. The weather's amazing. Stay inside.
I've just discovered a trick.
Yes, go.
I've told Tesla's website I'm Belgian, or I'm in Belgium. And since I speak fluent Flemish, because I am actually Belgian, I can see the new versions in Flemish, and the range is 629 actually, and there's only two models. So there's a rear-wheel drive and a dual motor, and it's an extra €1,300 for blue, which is all I will be changing actually. So yeah, it's 629. So the range has gone up by 20 kilometers.
So when you make your choices, because that's January, February, March, right? Is when you're planning on doing that?
Early next year, yeah.
Is there anything else that you're going to look at in between then, besides the Seal?
I'm definitely going to drive the Seal. If there's nothing else on my list, unless someone announces something new. If I learn about something, I will give it a go. Like if someone tells me that, they were really surprised by X or Y, well, heck, I'll give X or Y a go. The impression I'm getting is that in 3 years' time, when I'm doing this again, I have a feeling Stellantis will be really high on my radar, because the stuff they're describing about their next upcoming platform sounds really good. If they deliver what they're promising in their next platform, like what is it, Stellar Medium, or what are they calling it?
Mm-hmm. Stella Medium. Mm-hmm.
Stella, oh yeah, that was it. The Stella Medium platform sounds amazing, and if those cars were ready now, they'd really be in contention, because I would really quite like it. I've always had a thing for Peugeots, actually. I always wanted to. When I was a kid, it was the big battle. I don't know if it was the thing in America, but in Europe, it was the battle of the GTIs, and you had Golf people, and you had 205 people. I was very much a 205 person. I always wanted the Peugeot 205, or later on the 306. Would have loved a sporty 306 as a teenager. In blue.
My wife's cousin lives he was born in Scotland, right? She has family over there. He has such a thick Scottish accent that you can barely understand. His name is Naren. You can barely understand anything this kid says, right? And for the longest time, and when I first met him, he was like 16. Maybe he's a little older than that. But he really, really good human being. Loved hanging out with this guy. And we would go into places and people who were Scottish couldn't understand him. That's how thick his accent was. So for almost 2 weeks that I was hanging out with him, he was telling me about a Peugeot, which his family had just purchased, but I didn't know what Peugeot was, first of all. Second of all, I had no idea what he was talking about. I was talking to this kid for what seemed like hours over something that I had no idea what he was even saying or talking about. But he was a big fan. He was very happy that he convinced his parents to buy one. So.
I always think the apparently they're completely unreliable and they fall apart because French cars are like that, but they have an awful lot of heart. And yeah, I guess that's very European actually. If you think like an Alfa Romeo, you know, when it works, it's the world's best car. Most of the time, it's in need of a repair. And, you know, I don't think the Peugeots are quite at the Italian level. But Peugeot and Citroën are known to be, actually Citroën in particular, are known to be terrible for their electronics. But they do cool stuff like air suspension and stuff, right? The Citroën, since the Deux Chevaux, the CV2 or whatever you guys call it in the States, 2CV, Deux Chevaux, they've always had cool cars, right? Actually, do they make it to your side of the pond?
No.
No, because their EVs look gorgeous, but because they're on the Stella Small or whatever the hell the current platform from Stellantis,
I don't even know if it is a Stella platform that it's currently on. I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought Stella Medium was the first platform they were going to start building, and I don't know if they've officially started. Maybe some of the. I know the European part of Stellantis is further along than the U.S. side of things. The U.S. side of things feels like it's quite behind, but like it's so behind. I have almost in every week I have an article about Stellantis that I put in my notes, and it even like there are stages when I put behind the curtain here. I'll read an article, I'll put it in staging, and then that will go into staging again, and then I'll review that staging and decide what actually goes into the show. And at the last minute, usually for time or energy purposes, I axe the Stellantis one because they're so far behind. I feel like they could say anything,
right?
And whatever I say isn't going to be necessarily what reality looks like.
Well, like, so my experience is I see the Stellantis brands on the road and they look amazing. And because I'm on the hunt for a car, the first thing I do is I go home and I open up the website for the appropriate Stellantis brand and I go and look up the details of the car I was just ogling over. And the range on all of them universally sucks. They are usually about 300 kilometers. Which is
put
pathetic.
It about 140 miles.
Yeah. So even my 2.5-year-old Tesla is 420. So if the first number is a 3, no, sorry, but that wouldn't have been great 2 years ago. It's terrible now. So they look amazing. Like the Citroen, the C4s and the C5s, they look so cool, and the 308e, they look amazing, the Peugeots. But as soon as you look at the spec sheet, it just falls apart. It's just, nope, you're not ready yet. So that's why I think when they have their platform, I think they will make really fun cars.
I agree.
Need to do it.
Yeah, I have Stellantis also, and I'll let you go here in a second. But Stellantis also has a weird thing where part of at least their U.S. side of things really wants to keep that muscle head, like this is Mopar, 1960s, muscle car. They want to keep that feel even outside of muscle cars, right? And there are other brands like minivans. It just feels like they don't want to let that side of the story go. And I don't think you have to. I think you can reinvent yourself with, this minivan that can go 0 to 60 in less than 5 seconds. I think I think their messaging is we're going to hold on to what made us, part of Americana, but I think it should be, we're going to improve what made us part of Americana.
I mean, the power of having so many brands is that you should be able to do it all. Like in terms of I'm just looking at the American brands, and they're all of a kind. Well, no, Chrysler isn't. Chrysler doesn't have that Americana feel, really. They should really use the Chrysler brand for something more sensible. But Dodge, you're expecting a big shouty car. Jeep, you're expecting a fairly shouty car. Ram, you're expecting a pretty shouty car. They're the only American brands I recognize. Actually, they are largely a European company. Abrath, Alfa Romeo, Maserati, they're sporty, shouty cars. But then your Citroen is your completely quirky family car. Your Lancia, crazy, that brand still exists. Opel and Peugeot are your typical family cars. Vauxhall is just Opel in Britain because they're different. Or do you think they are? Yeah, they have a much nicer range of European brands now that I'm looking at it here. I don't recognize Free to Move or Lesis or something like that. Lesis? Don't even recognize that brand.
Yeah.
But other than that,
I didn't recognize either one of those either.
Yeah, and DS is basically Citroen Sporty. DS is just the fancy pants Citroen. And they've taken the Citroen logo and they've made it as if Escher painted it, or maybe one of the Cubist artists. It just exploded it. They used to call them Picasso, but since turns out he's a bit of a sort of a, I think it was I don't think he'd do well in the Me Too era. So I don't think they're using that brand as much anymore. But DS Automobiles, that was basically the I guess it's the Lexus of Citroen.
Got it. And Free to Move is their charging, like their DC fast charging brand.
Oh, so they're not.
They
cars.
partnered, I think, with Mercedes on that and stuff like that.
Actually, that was the other brand. A colleague in work was aghast that I had not considered Mercedes. So to humor him, I went to the Mercedes website. Yeah, there was a reason they weren't on my short list. Either I spend double my budget, or I get a car with far too little range in a shape I don't want that looks pretentious and ick.
See, there's a person in my neighborhood that has one of those, right? One of the EVs, and every time I pull up next to it, I feel inferior, and that's on me. But I'm like, this car it always looks like it's wet. It always looks like it is just sleek and like it's just moving through the air. And then I look at what their instrument panel looks like, through the windows, because we don't live in the same part of the neighborhood. And I'm like, man, that's really nice. But also, I don't want to spend that much money on a vehicle ever.
Right. Because I went to their website, it went, show me the EVs only, sort by price, ascending. So it was 55,000 was the starting point in euro, which is it's a little below the Model 3, but that was a terrible car. And it did not have a nice interior or a nice exterior or good range. It was a pretty awful car. And then the next one up was 65, and then into the 70s, and then into the hundreds, 200s. And then we were into amazing cars. They looked fantastic outside and in and had stupendous range. But that's triple my budget. And no. So I was like, look, you work with me. How were you thinking of this car? And I was like, I wasn't thinking of it for me.
My one of the people on the other shift that relieves us, she became it's common for firefighters to make terrible financial decisions. So she became a firefighter, got out of the academy, and wrecked her, I think it was a Kia, right? And then she was like, okay, well, I'm going to buy a new car. I got insurance money. She bought a really nice Mercedes. I don't know which model it is, but it's really nice. And she takes really good care of this thing. But she basically has to work one overtime a week. And because she's new, her overtimes don't pay all that much. So she has to take one overtime a week to pay for that car and her apartment. Yeah.
Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz?
Yeah.
They do still have something. Yeah, but as I say, they didn't last long on my short list, even though my colleague insisted on looking at it again. But no, they did not get far. So yeah, like I say, I'm open. I'm open to discovering something I don't know about, but I'm pretty sure the Seal will be my last test drive, and then I'm going to wait for the 2024 model year pricing on the Polestar 2 and the official range, and then into the spreadsheet it'll all go. But unless something unexpected happens, it'll be Polestar choice number 1, Ioniq 6 choice number 2, and choice 3 is open. Might be
Okay.
the Seal. Yeah, choice 3 is open.
Well, that's awesome. Bart, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I realized the last time when I was editing our last episode, I did not give you an opportunity to share where people can find you. I also didn't tweet about it or anything else last time you were on. I'm so sorry. But you did. You're like, hey, I was on this podcast. I was, I'm a bad host. But how can people find you?
Easiest place to go is lets-talk.ie, which is where my 2 podcasts hang out. They are both monthly shows. I do one show each month on the Apple News. There's lots and lots of people doing regular Apple News every day or every week. I do the zoom out version. I basically stand back and take the big picture view once a month. And it's really fun writing those show notes because you actually do get a different view of what's going on when you only do 12 shows in a year. And then my other one is a photography show, and it is not a gear show, even though my Apple stuff is clearly gear, right? That's by definition. But the photography show is the complete opposite of that. It is about the art and craft of photography. Why would you use a zoom lens? Not what zoom lens should I buy? What's the difference between shooting with a big camera versus a camera phone? Not which camera phone should I buy? That's sort of the difference, I guess. How to photography, not what to buy. I mean, I'm a lot of fun.
Is the first step always live in a fairy tale like book of village? Is that the first step? Because I see your photos and I'm like,
No, there is beauty everywhere.
All of them. The color is beautiful. The flowers are beautiful. The sky is beautiful, even when it's gray outside. The buildings are beautiful. If you threw that in a little black and white and maybe added a little effect here and there, you could make it look like it was like 1940s industrial area. You live in an area that is just very photogenic, and it's hard to find that in the dirt field sandbox that I live in.
There is something photographically special everywhere. It's different everywhere. And sometimes it involves zooming in, sometimes it involves zooming out, but there is something everywhere. And the art and craft of photography is finding it.
I will say that Arizona has the best sunsets out of any place I've ever lived. Including
big skies, like
beautiful. And it's so pretty. And one of the rockets went up in California last week. And we were sitting outside watching that. That was really cool. That
is cool. Yeah, we don't have. No one launches rockets from Ireland.
Yeah. Well,
we don't know weather for it.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Bart. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to put everything in the show notes, and I appreciate you coming on and being so generous with your time.
Bodhi, I have so much fun talking to you. You can have me on whenever we have something to talk about. You can always have me on because I love talking to you, and apparently the listeners like it too.
They do, and since we've had so many digressions in this conversation to this point, I'm just going to leave them in because I keep telling people that they need to know what the conversation's really like, and this is what it's like. So no editing today.
That's a good excuse. I like it. Actually, in the very early days of podcasting, there was a podcaster I listened to called it "Live to the Hard Drive," which is his excuse for not editing. I thought it was a great phrase, "Live to the Hard Drive." Anyway, Bodhi, thank you again, and I will talk to you whenever.
Thank you, Bart.
I would like to thank Bart for coming on and being so generous with his time and information. Like, Bart lives in Ireland. It is late for him when we record this, and he comes on, he gives us great information. He is very patient with me. So yeah, I adore Bart. He's a wonderful human being. So if you want to catch more Bart Bouchots, you can catch him on the NosillaCast. Every 2 weeks he's on, and he does security bits with Allison Sheridan, another friend of the show. And then Bart has Let's Talk. So it's Let's Talk Photography and Let's Talk Apple. And I will put links to the show notes for all of this. And I would highly encourage you to go and listen. All right, everyone, that is it for me this week. If you want to email me, Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You can also find me on Twitter at 918digital. I hope you all had a wonderful day, wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you on Friday, where my guest will be Edwin Zhao.